couple of Ducks ended up going in the first round. We'll get to them in a moment. Let me shout out the Huskies first. Hold on. I'm just going to scroll here for a second.
Making the same joke twice within a 30-minute span.
Audience turns over in every 10 minutes. Derrick Harmon went 21 to Pittsburgh. That seemed like the trendy pick in mocks leading up to it. Pittsburgh seemed like an ideal fit. The question for them...
It's an ideal fit. You thought that was a trendy... I thought the Steelers and Shedeur was the trendy pick.
I've reached a point in the day of the draft where I thought Shedeur was going to very likely slip out of the first round. There just seemed to be a lot of chatter there. I had people in Pittsburgh reaching out to me to have me come on to talk about Derrick Harmon because that's how the mocks were pointing to them. Now, to your point on Shedeur, he did get some back... If you dive into like Pittsburgh Steeler bubbles... He got some backlash because a lot of people wanted him to take Shedeur Sanders, and the quarterback's there, and everybody's saying Mason Rudolph's your quarterback.
They don't
and he
have
took
a
defensive lineman.
Yeah.
So them taking Harmon tells me they're thinking they're going to get Rodgers, but that's a whole different conversation.
That's for one season.
I know. You're not wrong. Whole different conversation. He goes 21 to Pittsburgh, and then Connerly in the back end of the first round, a guy who we weren't sure if he was going to go in the first round of the draft last night. And then you just kind of kept your eye on, ends up going 29 to Washington. So if you're a Duck fan who roots for Ducks in the NFL, Steelers and Commanders are your new teams
Well,
now.
Cam Hayward's going to be out of the NFL soon. He's getting up there in the age ladder. That is an absolute fit if you've ever seen one. Derrick Harmon is a wall. Pittsburgh is built on defense and grit and grind, and it's perfect. There's nothing else really to say. That just seems like a perfect fit. I'd still be alarmed if I was a Steeler fan. Like, are they going to draft a quarterback? And then, like, is that Shuck? Is Shuck getting you up?
I don't know.
Would you rather have Shedeur or Shuck?
I mean, I'd rather have Shedeur than
Me
Shuck.
too. So,
Not even
like,
close.
I'm curious to see what they do at that position. They don't have a quarterback. I'm sorry. You're not winning anything with Mason Rudolph.
On top of that, too, by the way, they don't have a second-round pick as well.
Right.
They don't pick again until the third round.
And Rodgers is just, how are you trusting anything? When you hear him talk, how do you trust anything?
You can't trust it at all.
So I love Harmon. If I'm a Steeler fan today, though, I'm a little bummed,
I get
admittedly. And I get why people are out on Shedeur, but we don't have a quarterback. Washington is a great spot. I mean, Connerly, I'll be fascinated with. He seemed like a lock to be a top 10 pick at one point, and that all kind of changed as we kept going closer and closer to the draft. And then it was like, would he even get picked in the first round? You get to go to an NFC championship team.
Oh, it's a
with
perfect
a ton
spot.
of veteran linemen there.
With a coach who everybody loves.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if Connerly will ever be what Lanning and every other person thought he would be in the NFL, but it ain't going to be for lack of a bad franchising situation. That's just going to be, it just didn't work for whatever reason. So he had to have been so excited. And I know that we played the other side more than we do this. Shedeur, like, has a draft set constructed at his house, and it's funny, haha, you weren't drafted.
Legendary.
But we focus a lot on the heartbreak. And I go back to the Rory McIlroy thing where he had just blown it on 18. He's devastated. He's trying to get his Grand Slam. He's mentally just broken. And his best bud, his caddy, says, you would have taken this playoff if I told you that's what it took.
If I told you on Monday we'd be in a playoff, you'd take it in a heartbeat.
And I take that exact same logic and I apply it to every one of these players. And I say, you would have taken playing and blocking for Jaden Daniels if I told you that's where you end up all day. And so Connerly, I think, has got to be ecstatic. Harmon's obviously excited.
They just seem like good fits for both of them, right?
Connerly is a great spot for him.
You go to
Washington's a great spot for Connerly, excuse me.
You go to a place with a franchise quarterback heading in the right direction that's set up to win seemingly for years to come.
Yeah.
Never a guarantee, but it does feel like a very certain thing right now. And then for Harmon, I mean, a place that's had a dominant defensive line for how long? And I know that some of them are getting a little bit longer in the tooth, but you get to go play with an elite defensive group where you're not going to be asked to be a saver. You just kind of fit into the scheme, man.
Cam Hayward gets to be a big brother for him.
That's a really good spot to go learn. Like, we can question the overall strategy by Pittsburgh, which is a totally fair conversation, but it just in terms of, like, if you're a defensive lineman, you tell me, hey, if you're a D lineman getting drafted, where would you want to go? Pittsburgh's one of the first teams that's coming out of my mouth.
How good do you think Harmon's going to end up being? We're talking all-pro?
I don't know about all-pro. I don't know how many. That's the hard part about this draft.
Him and Mason Graham, who is, and I know it's just to take. Nobody really knows. It's just I'm so interested to see how some of these. The D linemen were a big part of this draft.
They were,
and so watching
some of them proven, some of them
Right.
unproven, some of them just measurable, some of them with actual track
like
records.
Kenneth Grant at Miami.
Yeah.
Nobody's talking about that pick.
No.
Mason Graham, his teammate. Walter Nolan.
Yeah, the couple of
Derrick
Georgia
Harmon,
edge guys, yeah.
Right? You got a lot of DTs in this draft, how that's all going to shake out. And then the edge guys. I don't know which one truly is. Abdul Carter seems like the most can't miss one.
Yep, but he's also got injury concerns.
Right. Yes.
It's been banged up.
Right.
So, it's hard to get a read on it. I don't know if I view him as a, first team all pro kind of guy. I think he can he's got a hell of a work ethic. He's a great kid, and I think he's going to a perfect fit where they develop defensive linemen as good as anybody, it seems like, in the league. And so all of that points to me, him having a very good NFL career.
Were you surprised Denver went DB?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't surprised there. I think depending on who else was still on the board, like I think the thought for them would have been, hey, if Tyler Warren somehow gets there when he's on the board still at 14 and we're drafting at 20,
yeah,
I would have loved that for Bo.
I thought Burden might be in play.
Yeah.
He didn't get picked in the first round. Will Johnson's another name that didn't
Will
get picked
Johnson
in the first
is a guy
round.
who is at top of many people's list going into day 2, but he also has injury concerns, so that's the problem there.